Hi everyone, this is CeeCee from CeeCee's Creations and welcome back to the 12 days of Christmas. This is day 7 and we're going to color that bear, and he's kind of tangled in string lights, and I'm going to be doing a night scene, as you probably have noticed from the thumbnail. I will show you an alternative to transferring the design, an alternative to printing it, but before I do that, I want to prep my watercolor paper, and I'm working on 140-pound weight hot pressed satin grain by Arches, and I'm just measuring a border because all my coloring pages are meant to be 8 by 10. And this page or this paper is 9 by 12. So on the long end, I'm going to mark it at 1/2 inch on each side, and the short end is going to be cut by 1 inch. And by cutting, I mean taped. I'm going to use artist tape to create a border. And once that's done, I'm going to be ready to transfer the design onto the watercolor paper. And you saw earlier, I showed you a marker. This is a Pitt Artist Pen by Faber-Castell, and it's a gray tone. It's number 272. There's no color name, and it's a brush tip. And there's my old, my faithful Stampin' Up! Light box. It's nothing too fancy. It's actually quite clunky, but I have it and it works. So, and here's the sketch, and as you can see, I have no problem seeing through it. And I just tape the sketch behind my watercolor paper so that it doesn't move while I transfer it. And in a few seconds, I'm going to turn off the light in my studio because that's when I can best see the design. Now, of course, you can also print it on a laserjet printer would be best. If you're using an inkjet printer, I suggest that you print it in a gray color as opposed to its original black, because that might bleed. Or you can take it to a photocopier. But in terms of watercolor paper, some places do not accept watercolor paper. They don't want it to get stuck in their machine. So I think a light box is your best bet, or graphite paper. And once the design is traced, I'm going to keep the artist tape halfway through, I want to say, because I have masking to do, and I'm going to work on the background first. And you're going to see in a second how nice the design. I love this color, by the way. It's a warm gray, and it's just perfect to do a no line coloring like I'm going to be doing. And I want to show you my little trick. I've talked about the trick, but here's the Murphy's oil soap. And I've paused here because I've gotten a lot of questions. It seems that not everybody knows about Murphy's oil soap or what it looks like. So if you're one of those people, then you can take a look at the label. And I'm showing you how, where exactly I dip I dip my brush halfway to on the ferrule halfway through, so that way I'm sure that I grab the ends of the bristles as well, close to the ferrule, because that usually is when a brush starts to fan out. And once that's done, I don't rinse the brush, I just remove the excess with my fingers, and then I'm good to go. And I can go for a while and the masking fluid will not gunk up my brush. So I'm going to be masking the stars, the whole bear, and I'm also flicking some of that drawing gum by Pebeo to create some stars. And to color, I'm going to be using first the Mission Gold Mijello watercolor set that was gifted to me by one of my awesome patrons. And I wet the whole thing on top, and to try to minimize as much as possible warping, I sprayed water on the back of it. I'm not working on a board. I did not stretch my paper, which is something that you're supposed to do if you're going to flood your work but I didn't want to be bothered. So I did get quite a bit of warping, but that didn't bother me because I was doing a sky that there was a lot going on, and I personally liked the blooms. As you can see here, I got like extremely big blooms, but I'm good with that. The white gold that I'm adding here did not make a difference, so you can skip that. It doesn't even show because there's too much happening in the background, and yeah, so you can skip that step. And here I'm removing all the drawing gum, and for that I use my fingers through a plastic bag. It just grabs more and it doesn't use up my poor skin on I've got very sensitive skin, so yeah, that saves my fingers. For the stars, I wanted them bright. I wanted them to stand out, so I started by using lemon yellow, and then I'm going to go around the edges with burnt sienna. And once that's done, I'm going to go back with a very thirsty brush, which is a brush that's been cleaned in clean water, obviously, and then kind of like I don't remove all the water, just the excess. I just sort of tap it on a tissue, and that is just enough to make it thirsty. So a thirsty brush is a brush that will soak up the excess paint. So I sort of push back the burnt sienna, but not removing it completely, and that gives it a nice edge around the star. It makes the yellow inside a little bit more vibrant. But I'm also going to go over, once it's dry, with a fresh coat of lemon yellow, and that's it. The stars are good to go. They're really popping, and I really like them. I thought of coloring them gold. The thing with gold though is that if you're seeing the work from up front and the reflection doesn't hit it really well, it doesn't look as nice. So I really wanted the stars to be bright, and that's why I went for yellow. Here I'm showing you a little trick to remove some of the warping. It doesn't remove it completely, but it does the trick. I kind of like, I use my heat tool and I work the paper at the same time. It works halfway. It's still better than not doing anything about it. So now I'm going to leave you with some music, because I will be indicating all the colors that I'll be using, and later on I'll also be doing some shading with Prismacolors, because I couldn't get the right shading with the watercolors. The image is too detailed for that. And by the way, I'm using a number 4 round brush by Princeton Neptune, and it has a nice tip, so I quite like it. I'm just slowing down the speed here so that you can see how I shade with color pencils. I do small circles and I go very lightly. If you use a heavy hand, you're going to be left with a wax residue. And because I'm doing watercolors, it's very soft and I want all my shading to be that way. So I'm proceeding with caution here. I'd rather add multiple layers than risk the chance of having that waxy look, because Prismacolors are wax based. So you got to be careful. And my light source is coming from the right, so everything on the left will be darker. And I think this lavender color that I chose goes really well with the mix that I made earlier for the bear's fur, which was bright clear violet and black. And by the way, purples and yeah, I guess lavender is a shade of purple. They make for great shading. I think that they go with any color combination. And I'm going to move on to darker colors of the watercolors that I've chosen to add shadows. And towards the end, I'm going to use a little bit of brown and then a tiny bit of black. I didn't want it to be too dark, but because this is a night scene, black was kind of necessary. But I will do that in just a few places. I'm laughing now because while I'm editing this, I'm looking at the dots that I made on the scarf. And if you're looking at the pleat on the top of the scarf, right in the middle, one of the dots is shaded completely the opposite of what it should be. I just think it's funny. So don't pay attention to my dots, guys. If you're gonna shade, do your own stuff, please. And there's the completed page. with the exception of that polka dot. I'm super happy with how it turned out. I've had a lot of fun, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching the video. Once again, I would encourage you to go and visit my Etsy shop if you're interested in coloring this page. All 12 days of Christmas are up there for grabs. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below, and I will see you later. Actually, I will see you tomorrow with day 8. Yes. Bye.